Revenge with Karen.
The first red flag wasn't the new VP calling me Janet for 3 weeks straight. It wasn't the culture refresh email stuffed with words like synergy and optimization. Hell, it wasn't even when he installed a nap pod in the break room like we were a damn tech startup, instead of a logistics firm that moved steel coils and industrial adhesives. No, I knew we were heading for a cliff the day I heard him laugh, really laugh, the idea of legacy costs during a budget meeting. His exact words: "If it's older than my crypto wallet, it's probably dead weight." Everyone chuckled. I didn't, because I was the legacy. And I knew something none of those fresh scrubbed consultants in skinny pants did. Dead weight doesn't hold up the building. I did. For 17 years, I worked in that office, same desk, same dull top walls, same damn drip coffee maker that brewed something suspiciously close to burnt rubber. It wasn't flashy. I didn't pitch clients or pose for press releases. I built the bones, the debt ladders, the rollover schedules, the bank covenant reports that kept the whole circus from imploding. When the 2011 crisis hit, and our survival depended on securing a last-ditch loan, I was the one who stepped up. Everyone else panicked. I put my name down. My personal assets, my own house and retirement fund were pledged to back the company's future because I believed in it more than anyone else in that boardroom. They all clapped, and then promptly forgot. And that was fine for a while. I didn't want applause. I wanted stability. I wanted to keep the lights on. I'd walk the halls unnoticed, invisible in my quiet cardigan and sensible shoes, while execs in tailored suits got their bonuses for vision. Vision doesn't mean jack if you don't read the fine print. And boy, had they stopped reading. If you're still with me, hey, real quick, do us a tiny favor. Most folks don't subscribe or tap that little like button, but it genuinely helps keep stories like this alive. And our team, we survive on caffeine and chaos, so toss us a lifeline. All right, back to it. Things started unraveling the day the new VP, Tyler with AY, of course, took over operations. Came from some Silicon Valley boot camp with a resume that read like a TED Talk transcript. Kind of guy who calls himself a disruptor but couldn't balance a checkbook without an app. First thing he did was pull a cost audit. Second thing, schedule a town hall where he slapped a PowerPoint up and declared, "We've got fat to trim, folks. Dead weight to cut loose." I already knew whose name was on that list. He never asked what I did, not once. Never pulled my reports, never sat in on a financial review. To him, I was a relic, something yellowing in the back of a filing cabinet, probably next to the warranty for a fax machine. But here's the thing about relics. They're often holding up the roof beams. Every morning, I clocked in at 7:30 sharp. Not because I had to, but because I was the only one who knew how to decode the old Excel macros that tracked our covenant triggers. I monitored 5 separate banking agreements, 3 of which had clauses written in legalese so archaic it might as well have been Latin. But I understood every damn word. Clause 14C burned into memory. It was the one that said, termination of the guarantor without board oversight triggers immediate review and potential recall of the loan. The clause nobody else cared about. The clause I'd written into our debt restructure plan over a decade ago. Just in case. Because when everyone else ran scared, I planned for the next war. Tyler never asked why my name was the only one on the official guarantor form. Never noticed that I hadn't signed the transfer authority packet. Never wondered why I still had access to the master compliance terminal even after they started automating legacy processes. Because he was too busy planning his tech's talk on financial efficiency through disruption. Cute title. Shame about the ending. The email hit at 6:43 a.m. Subject line, mandatory all hands, 9 a.m. sharp. No context. Just a calendar invite stuffed between a recurring debt roll notice and my daily compliance digest. When I walked into the conference room, Tyler was already there, perched on a stool like some kind of stand-up comic, sleeves rolled, tie askew, his attempt at relatable. The room reeked of overconfidence and artisanal cologne. Someone had replaced the old screensaver on the projector with a fresh company slogan. Lean, agile, ruthless. I knew right then somebody was getting bled. He opened with a joke. Of course he did. Something about how even his Peloton instructor said he needed to trim the fat. Chuckles scattered like lazy birds. Then he dropped the bomb. We've identified redundancies and outdated roles across the organization. It's time for a reset, fresh energy. Streamlined focus, a more legacy bloat. And just like that, my name appeared on the screen. Full name, bold font. Judy L. Kaplan, departing role, Executive Finance Operations. No warning, no call, no preamble. I stared at it like it was someone else's obituary. He didn't even look at me when he read the next line aloud. We thank Judy for her many years of service and wish her all the best in her next chapter. Many years? 17, you jackass. Kept your company alive through a credit squeeze that buried half the damn industry. I wrote the playbook you've been coloring outside of since day one. But I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. I stood up, smoothed the front of my blazer, walked past the open mouths and darting eyes of the finance team, and handed my badge to the nearest intern. The poor kid flinched like I'd just handed him a live grenade. Maybe I had. Tyler clapped, one of those smug little golf claps, like I was retiring instead of being gutted like a fish. Let's all show Judy some appreciation, he said, already turning back to his slides. His next bullet point, new Agile Finance Lead, TBD, hire within 30 days. Good luck with that, sunshine. Outside, the fluorescent hum of the lobby sounded like static in my ears. My phone buzzed once, an automated HR email with the subject line. Exit procedure checklist. That was it? 17 years, reduced to a template. I sat in my car for a long time, watching employees shuffle past with paper cups and AirPods, nobody looking twice. And that's when it hit me, not the rage, not even grief, just clarity. They didn't know what they'd just done. Not really. Because you don't pull the foundation out of a building mid-renovation and expect it to stand. See what Tyler and whatever MBA puppy mill spat him out didn't realize was that nothing in our covenant agreements had been updated since I last touched them. Because nobody else could touch them. I was the signatory, the sole guarantor, the woman whose name sat on the final page of every high-risk loan taken out since 2011. And under Clause 14C, my termination, if not formally reviewed by the board, was grounds for immediate default review. But of course, nobody read Clause 14C. Too dense, too technical. Finance didn't even have a dedicated legal liaison anymore. That was my job, until 5 minutes ago. I pulled into my driveway, shut the engine off, and walked inside. The cat meowed once and went back to sleep on the radiator. I stepped into the office and opened the cabinet drawer where I kept the original hard copies, signed, notarized, and blessed in blue ink. My hands didn't shake. They hadn't in years, not since the last CFO begged me to negotiate an extension with the bank when our Q2 cash flow dried up. They thought they'd clipped a loose thread, but they hadn't realized that thread ran through the whole damn quilt. And now they'd yanked it clean out. The silence was clinical, not a single call. No "we're sorry," no half-assed attempt to ask for knowledge transfer, not even a LinkedIn message from some intern begging for access to the Covenant Tracker macros I'd coded in 2009. Just dead air. 17 years reduced to a checkbox. HR must have clicked deactivate next to my name and gone straight to their microwaved soup. I half expected someone to show up with a cupcake and a card that said "Good riddance, Judy." No one did. The funny part is I wasn't surprised. Not really. The new blood only respects noise, flashing dashboards, Slack threads, marketing wins. They don't see the woman who wrote the banking language that still governs their quarterly rollover. They see a spreadsheet ghost, forgotten the moment she logs off. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. The cat blinked at me like even he knew I was holding something radioactive. I went to the closet and pulled down a locked fireproof box. Inside it sat the folder, slim, black, embossed in cheap faux leather, titled in my handwriting, Clause 14C Activation Terms. I ran my fingers over it like it was an old scar. Clause 14C wasn't just a line in a document. It was the razor wire I'd installed after the 2011 collapse, when we nearly defaulted, and the board begged me to personally guarantee the post-crisis refinance. They were desperate. The market had frozen. No traditional lender would touch us without collateral, and our credit was thinner than gas station coffee. So I signed. I guaranteed the loan with my personal retirement fund and a lien on my lake cabin. In return, I added one paragraph to the covenant, buried under legal jargon thick as molasses. In the event that the named guarantor, J.L. Kaplan, is removed from active employment without a formal vote of approval by the board of directors, in the absence of a ratified succession plan submitted to and accepted by the primary lender, the lender reserves the right to demand full repayment of the outstanding balance within 72 hours of notification. No one questioned it. They were too busy hyperventilating over the numbers. And over the years, no one remembered, because no one ever asked. I filed every quarterly covenant compliance report myself, signed them, updated the status flags. The system was held together with legacy code and sheer willpower. No auto alerts, no red flags unless I lit them manually, which I now had every reason to do. Back then, they said I was a team player. Now I was bloated headcount. How poetic. I opened the file. Inside were the originals, the loan agreement, my notarized guarantee, the board minutes from 2011, and the last update I'd submitted 6 weeks ago, timed, as always, just ahead of their quarterly filing deadline. I'd even included a reminder, covenant review due pending any personnel changes impacting guarantor role. I knew they didn't read it. I left it as bait. They treated my departure like a janitorial sweep, same as tossing out expired toner cartridges. HR hadn't even asked me to sign a transition memo. No debrief, no chain of custody for the access logs. They just revoked my badge, wiped my email, patted themselves on the back for saving $250,000 in salary. Only problem? My name was still on every legal document that mattered. And now, with me gone, those documents weren't just relics. They were loaded weapons. All I had to do was wait. Wait, and let their arrogance rip the pin out of the grenade. I took a deep breath, picked up my landline, the one nobody ever called anymore, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 6 years. It rang once, twice. Then a familiar voice answered, "You've got Judy. What's the temperature?" I smiled. It was the bank's covenant specialist. He still had me saved in his contacts. Let's just say, things are about to get warm. The cafe hadn't changed. Same chipped mugs, same ceiling fan that squeaked every third rotation like it had a secret to tell. The kind of place you go when you want to speak plainly without a whiteboard or a corporate goon breathing down your neck. Got there 10 minutes early and picked the booth in the back, under the flickering fluorescent that made everyone look slightly hungover. Perfect. He arrived just before the clock hit 9 o'clock. Gray hair now, but still walked like a man with purpose. Harold Fitz, once my boss, back when boss still meant something. CFO during the 2008 mess, the kind of man who kept a flask in his drawer but never needed it. He taught me that finance isn't about numbers, it's about leverage. And right now, I had more of it than I knew what to do with. He slid into the booth across from me, set his phone face down, and raised an eyebrow. "You're early. That either means you've got something good or you're about to propose a coup." "Maybe both," I said, sipping my lukewarm coffee. "You still drink it black. Only when I know the conversation's going to taste worse than the coffee." We talked shop for a few minutes, old stories about past CEOs, time we had to fake a regulatory audit just to stall a predatory lender, the good old days when incompetence wore a suit and didn't try to sell you on digital transformation. Then I pulled out the folder. Not the Clause 14C1, no, this one was heavier. Fatter. It had internal emails printed out, redline markups on budget proposals. The most recent covenant compliance reports I'd submitted before being tossed like expired yogurt. At the very bottom, a notarized copy of my original guarantor contract. My name in blue ink 3 times. Harold flipped through the pages slowly, his brows furrowing like storm clouds. He paused when he hit the section on succession planning or the total lack thereof. They really didn't submit a board vote, didn't even schedule one. No succession memo. HR sent me a Survey Monkey link and marked me as voluntary exit. He whistled, low and impressed. "Jesus, Judy, you're sitting on a ticking time bomb, I know. And you're telling me this why?" I leaned back. Let it breathe. Let the weight of the thing settle between us like the scent of scorched espresso. Because your firm just signed a preliminary LOI with one of our core clients, Mid-State Construction. You're going to need our debt clearance reports to close. He nodded slowly. "Your old shop's going to drag their feet or give us half-baked compliance docs without realizing their covenant's about to implode." "Exactly." Harold set the folder down. "You want a job?" "No," I said. "I want to be a problem solver. But I don't work for free." He smiled. "I didn't think so." He pushed the folder back toward me. "You're not just holding leverage. You are the leverage." There it was. The shift. Moment when he stopped seeing me as an ex-employee and started seeing me as what I really was. A financial warhead aimed directly at the people who discarded me. I reached into my bag and handed him a flash drive. "That's got the clean digital copies. Originals stay with me." He nodded. "We'll have legal looped in by EOD. Then he reached across the table and tapped the folder. "This thing, it's nuclear. You sure you want to go all the way?" I stared at him. "Daddy, they fired the wrong accountant, Harold. They just don't know it yet. Outside, the sun had started to rise properly, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. We shook hands like professionals, like conspirators. Then I left, clutching my half-empty coffee and the cold satisfaction that comes with being underestimated. War was coming. And this time, I wasn't fighting alone. The first paper cut came disguised as a gentle follow-up from Western Ridge Bank. Friday morning, 8:16 a.m., buried 3 scrolls down in the junior controller's inbox. Subject line, quarterly covenant status confirmation signatory contact. Polite, vague, and just annoying enough that it got flagged for review later. Nobody noticed the subtext. They were asking who the hell was now responsible for the $400 million lifeline propping up their balance sheet. By 10:30 a.m., there were 3 more. All from banks, all versions of the same question. Who signed the Q4 rollover? Where's the covenant dashboard? Can we confirm guarantor continuity? The finance team, bless their glassy-eyed souls, didn't know what to do. Judy always handled that stuff. Judy with the initials passworded into the macro that unlocked the compliance tracker. Judy who never missed a deadline, who responded to these kinds of emails before they were even sent. But Judy was gone. Officially retired. Officially, a ghost with a loaded gun aimed at their foot. Tyler didn't notice the emails. Of course he didn't. He was upstairs having his 4th meeting of the day with marketing, reviewing mock-ups for the new Resilience through Reinvention campaign. One of the interns had made a slick animated GIF with bouncing dollar signs and a sunrise. He loved it. "I want this live by Monday," he said, clapping once like a toddler demanding snacks. "Let's show the board we're doing things." Meanwhile, Eagle was quietly ignoring a draft review request from their own general counsel, because, in Tyler's words, legalese is like salt. A pinch, not the whole damn dish. So the draft never got reviewed. The banks kept emailing. And deep in the bowels of the finance drive, a calendar reminder blinked red. Covenant trigger review due today. Must include guarantor verification. No one clicked it. At 2:42 p.m., one of the junior analysts, Benji, 2 months out of college, business major, full of hope and monster energy, opened one of the bank emails and finally noticed the phrase Clause 14C. He Googled it. Nothing useful came up, so he typed Clause 14C Kaplan Guarantor into the internal document search. The system returned 0 results, not because the clause wasn't real, but because Judy had password protected her private compliance archive and never gave anyone the key. Walked over to his supervisor's desk, holding the printout like it had started smoking. "Hey, I found this thing about covenant clauses and us signatories. Do we have anyone replacing Judy?" The supervisor blinked. "Replacing her how? Like legally?" "On the covenants. There's language about board approval and email legal," the supervisor said, already clicking away. "They'll sort it." They didn't, because legal was already on edge from an earlier exchange with the bank's audit liaison, who'd requested a current signatory file. The liaison had worded it with just enough bite to suggest they knew something was off. But no one wanted to be the one to wake the VP with legacy paperwork drama. By end of day, the team had duct-taped together a reply that said Judy's departure had no material impact on compliance. They CC'd the wrong department. Meanwhile, upstairs, Tyler was sipping sparkling water in a glass-walled conference room, telling the board in smooth consultant speak that legacy turnover has yielded a net efficiency gain of 11.4% across static cost centers. No one questioned him. No one yet. But in the server logs, banks were starting to access the covenant portals more frequently. One even downloaded a full archive of Judy's last 5 submissions. Another scheduled a routine check-in call for Monday morning. Paper cuts, dozens of them, each tiny, each ignorable, until someone starts bleeding out. And the worst part, the only person who could stop it had just partnered with the competition. The stage was set. The blade had been drawn. They just hadn't realized yet they were already bleeding. It was the intern who finally lit the match. Her name was Priya. Smart kid, sharp eyes. Her senior thesis on post-crisis bank compliance models, which made her the only person under 30 in the building who gave a damn about covenant structure. She wasn't supposed to touch the legacy files, but Benji had dumped a USB on her desk labeled Judy Docs, and mumbled something about that weird clause thing. She cracked it open between espresso runs, skimmed the fine print, and stopped cold at Clause 14C. She read it twice. A third time, she highlighted the key sentence, slapped a sticky note on it that just said ooh, and carried the printout straight into her manager's office. He barely looked up. What's this? Clause 14C. From the covenant files Judy left behind. It says her termination required board pre-approval. And succession planning, neither happened. He smirked. That clause is symbolic. Not the way this is worded, she pressed. Says the lender reserves the right to call the loan under breach of guarantor continuity. He waved her off. Legal handles this stuff. Forward it to them, so she did. And that's where things got stickier. Legal opened the file, skimmed it, and did what legal does best when something smells like liability, shrugged and punted. It's probably a contingency clause, someone wrote. Non-binding unless the bank decides to act. The problem was, the bank had already started acting, just weren't yelling yet. Tyler was the next wallet hit, Monday morning. He was 3 sips into his turmeric smoothie when the CFO flagged him down outside the elevator. Got a second, the CFO said, for legal forwarded me something about Judy's termination, some clause she was tied to. Something about board pre-approval, Tyler groaned. Is this about that paperwork Benji was freaking out over? I thought we already put that to bed. Clause 14C, from our debt covenants. The banks are referencing it in their comms now. Banks reference a lot of things. They're like lawyers with calculators. Judy was expensive, her job was redundant, we're better off. She was the sole signatory. That can't be right. She never signed over the roll. Tyler blinked. She what? She didn't sign the transfer documents. They were never filed, her name's still on the active covenants. Tyler pulled out his phone and flicked through his calendar. Fine, get legal to draft a backdated succession notice. We'll smooth it over. You don't backdate a covenant, the CFO said flatly. That's how you end up subpoenaed. There was a long pause. Tyler's smoothie started to separate. Okay, he said. So worst case scenario, what, we send a memo and tell the bank she's gone? No, the CFO said. Worst case is that we've already tripped the clause and the bank calls the loan. Tyler scoffed. They wouldn't do that over paperwork. CFO looked pale. Not if she was still on our side. That shut him up, because she wasn't, and Tyler knew it. He'd heard the whispers late last week. Judy spotted at that downtown cafe across from Cornerstone Partners, sipping coffee with their CFO. At the time, he thought nothing of it. Now, it sounded like someone hammering nails into his coffin. He rushed back upstairs, slammed his office door, and barked into the intercom, "Get legal in here." Now, but it was already too late. Back in finance, the junior team scrambled to dig through archived folders Judy had locked down years ago. None of the passwords worked. The compliance dashboard still listed her email as the key contact for covenant fulfillment. One of the banks requested a phone verification call. They didn't have a number on file that worked. And deep in the corner of the server, automated covenant bot Judy had programmed years ago flagged the account as non-compliant. Who approved this? Someone asked out loud, holding the HR file with Judy's termination notice. The answer? No one, no vote, no succession plan, no approval, just Tyler. Just ego, and now, just silence. The kind of silence that always comes before something breaks. Because Judy hadn't walked out with a cardboard box full of trinkets, walked out with the pin from the grenade. And no one noticed she left the grenade behind, still ticking. The email hit inboxes at 7:42 p.m. on a quiet Sunday evening, the corporate version of a sniper shot through a stained glass window. Subject line, Notice of Loan Performance Review Western Ridge Bank. No emojis, no marketing fluff. Just a PDF attachment, a single sentence in the body. As part of our ongoing compliance protocols, full covenant review has been scheduled for Monday, 9:00 a.m. EST. Please have all relevant signatories and documentation available. The CFO saw it first, reading it on his iPad with a glass of Pinot halfway to his lips. He squinted at the date, then at the word full. Normally, the quarterly reviews were routine, more like ceremonial dances than actual audits. The bank would skim the ratios, scan for major red flags, move on with a perfunctory thumbs up. But this wasn't routine. This was them setting the chessboard. He forwarded it to Tyler with the note, just flagging, "This is heavier than usual. Judy's stuff might be needed after all." Tyler didn't respond for another hour. When he did, it was classic, all good. Tell them we're streamlined now. No hiccups. Judy's role was redundant. Let's show them that. Show them what exactly? Meanwhile, across the city, Judy sat in a dimly lit den with 2 folders open, one labeled Legacy Liabilities, the other Corporate Dissociation. A tab was open on her laptop, Cornerstone Partners' secure document portal. She was uploading her final notarized letter, addressed to Western Ridge, stating that effective immediately, She was withdrawing as guarantor on all active obligations, not expressly re-signed under new oversight. She had the right. Clause allowed it once formal employment ended, and if 30 days passed without corrective action. It had been 31. She clicked submit. There. Done. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just the quiet, fatal precision of a blade sliding into place. She leaned back, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it beside her on the coffee table. Inside were 3 things: her original contract, her covenant activation memo, and a handwritten letter to the board. I'm to be hand-delivered Tuesday morning if things went the way she expected. In the kitchen, the kettle began to whistle. Back at corporate HQ, panic was beginning to simmer beneath the surface. Legal had started pulling together a response deck for Monday's call. They tried to reach Judy once, sending a vague, awkward email from a general mailbox. Hi Judy, hope you're well. Quick favor, do you recall where the covenant checklist templates were stored? No reply. Of course not. They didn't realize that Judy had already spoken to someone else, her contact at Western Ridge. The same liaison who'd called her on Thursday, just to clarify a few details. The same one who now sat quietly on the other end of the pipeline, knowing full well what Clause 14C said and how badly it had been violated. Tyler, blissfully unaware, spent Sunday evening writing, linked in captions for Monday's press release, excited to share how our team is redefining legacy operations for a more agile future. #efficiency, #leadership, #disruption, he even attached a headshot. Meanwhile, Judy stared out her window at the dark, unmoving trees. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even vindictive. She was surgical. They'd fired her thinking she was a line item. But she was a clause with teeth. And come Monday morning, whose teeth were going to sink deep into their fiscal jugular. No shouting, no warning, just the cold pressure of consequence. And the clock ticking toward 9 a.m. The boardroom smelled like fresh pastries and hubris. Tyler stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, voice smooth as butter on polished wood. The morning sun bounced off the conference room glass like everything was under control. Slide 12 of his operational Renaissance deck was on screen. Nonsense about margin growth and team velocity. He'd even coined a phrase, legacy light. The phrase was trademarked. He smirked as he said it. The real beauty, he was saying, is how we've trimmed overhead while actually increasing quarterly throughput. That's the Judy effect. Remove the bottleneck, and the flow naturally improves. Someone chuckled. A few nodded. The head of HR scribbled something that looked suspiciously like Judy equals drag coefficient on a notepad. Then the double doors burst open. The CFO didn't knock, didn't pause, just stormed in with a stack of papers in one hand and a phone still glowing in the other. His face looked like someone had just forced him to read a eulogy for a living relative. We've got a situation, he said. The room fell quiet. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? The CFO dropped the papers on the table like they were burning his hands. The bank called the loan. Silence. Then, what? Exercised the recall clause. $400 million. Effective immediately. No one spoke. Then someone at the far end of the table, a VP of marketing or maybe strategy, breathed out, that's not possible. Is it? It's real, the CFO snapped. They cited breach of covenant, specifically Clause 14C. Termination of the guarantor without board authorization and without formal succession plan filed. Someone flipped to a page in a binder like that would help. Legal scrambled. One lawyer started muttering, but we were told that clause was decorative, symbolic, non-binding in precedent. It wasn't symbolic to the bank, the CFO hissed. They just froze our line of credit. HR dropped her pen. The head of ops asked, can't we just call Judy? Reverse the termination? She hasn't been on payroll for 31 days, the CFO said. And per her contract, that window matters more than you think. Tyler finally spoke, voice lower now, but still too smug for the moment. This is a misunderstanding. We just need to clarify. Tell them we're reorganizing. Bring them the new headcount chart. They'll calm down. They won't, the CFO replied. They already know. They asked if we had Judy's updated signatory file. We don't. Then what's the plan? Tyler snapped. We draft a memo, we explain the circumstances. There's no memo that fixes this. The CFO exploded. You terminated the sole guarantor of a $400 million credit facility without telling anyone. And now the bank's pulling the pin. All eyes turned to legal, then back to Tyler. One board member finally leaned forward, calm as a winter funeral. Was there ever a board vote approving her termination? Tyler's face flushed. It was a strategic realignment. That's not an answer. HR cleared it. HR doesn't authorize terminations of executive guarantors under covenant law. A junior assistant slipped into the room with a printed email. This just came from Judy Kaplan's attorney, she said, handing it to the CFO. He scanned it, then passed it around. It was a formal affidavit. One line underlined in bold. My client has withdrawn all personal liability related to the above credit facility, effective immediately, under terms previously filed and accepted by the lending institution. Tyler's hands twitched. Okay, he said, trying to smile, so she's bluffing. She doesn't want us to collapse, she's just trying to make a point. Then the screen in the conference room flickered. The projector mid-slide switched from the PowerPoint to a waiting Zoom call. It was Judy. No background, no noise. Just her, in a black blazer, sipping from a white mug that said world's okayest accountant. He didn't speak, just looked at the room like someone surveying the crater after a bomb hit. And then she smiled. Tyler's voice cracked. What is this? The CFO didn't look away from the screen. She warned us, in her silence. The room began to shift from panic to something worse, understanding. The CFO gripped the edge of the table like it might anchor him to a reality that no longer existed. His voice was ragged, low. Who, he asked slowly, scanning the stunned faces around the boardroom, authorized Judy Kaplan's termination? No one spoke. HR looked like she wanted to slide under the table. Legal was blinking rapidly, pen frozen midair. One of the board members, a retired colonel turned operations consultant, whispered, Jesus Christ. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it. The projector hummed. Judy adjusted her camera slightly, leaned back, and took another slow sip from her mug. Earl Grey, judging by the steam and the expression that followed, a picture of serenity, like someone watching a forest fire she didn't feel obligated to put out. I did try, she said softly, to make it clear. Tyler finally stammered out a sentence. There was no formal objection. You assumed, Judy cut in, voice calm but laced with something sharper than fury, that I was decoration. A footnote. You thought my silence meant surrender. She smiled gently. Meant I was winding the spring. Someone at the far end of the table made a soft, choking sound. The CFO turned to the screen. You told the bank? I told the bank I would not extend coverage, she said. I invoked Clause 14C, gave them all the necessary documentation. All in compliance, mind you, clean, legal. She lifted a piece of paper off her desk and held it toward the camera. They appreciated the clarity. Tyler's voice was barely audible. I've advised them to pull the loan? No, Judy said. I simply confirmed that I no longer meet the criteria of active executive guarantor. That alone was sufficient. The CFO's face drained of all remaining color. He sank back into his chair, exhaling like someone deflating under water pressure. We're not solvent without that credit line, he whispered. Correct, Judy said, still smiling. Which is why I'm so glad my expertise won't go to waste. Tyler flinched. What the hell does that mean? Judy didn't answer. She just leaned to the side and tapped a remote. The screen split. A press release appeared on the right, fresh, just published. Mid-State Construction finalizes new strategic partnership with Cornerstone Partners. $60M multi-year logistics contract secured. Silence. The same client they'd spent 2 years courting. The one they were counting on to patch the Q3 bleed. Gone. In one move, Cornerstone. Board chair whispered. I start there officially next week, Judy said, CFO-level advisory with a focus on structural debt leverage. I believe your largest client is now our newest onboarding. Tyler looked like he might vomit. This is sabotage. No, Judy said, setting her mug down. This is consequence. Legal stood up suddenly, as if thinking proximity to the room's panic would infect her. Across the table, someone muttered, Need to call the bank again. Try to negotiate. Buy time. Judy raised a hand politely like a professor correcting a student. They won't answer. Why not? Tyler snapped. Because I was the answer, she said, and you fired me. With that, the screen blinked off. No flare. No dramatic exit. Just the cold click of closure. Back in her quiet home office, Judy folded the last piece of paper, tucked it back into its folder, and slid it into a drawer. Done. There was a knock at the door. Delivery. A bouquet, tall, overstuffed, ostentatious. Red lilies. A gold-accented card that read, Welcome to the team, you already earned your bonus. R. Ellis, CEO, Cornerstone Partners. Judy stared at it for a moment. Then she walked it calmly to the kitchen, lifted the lid of the trash bin, and dropped the whole bouquet in without a word, a breath. A pause. And then, almost inaudible, she whispered to no one, that was just debt service. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch flicking chaos alive. Your ex boss is shaking in their loafers.